Okay, so there's 4 questions around which I structured this third keynote. How do we make our online community as safe as possible? How can individuals and religious professionals especially use social media in a way that improves relationships rather than harming them? This is really about ethical conduct. How can we be inclusive online? So that came to the question somebody asked about how do we not exclude other members of the congregation who may not be using social media or maybe can't use social media for, a significant economic or physical reason. How do we use social media in a way that's spiritually nourishing? Okay, so let's start with making an online community safe. So this has to do with the question somebody else asked about the kinds of content that can go up, all of that. Okay, I'm going to start with something like less heated and more basic, which is shared administrative access to your congregation's social media presence. Do not let a single person by themselves set up your congregation's Facebook page, Twitter feed, blog. It really needs to be a group discernment process like we talked about. And 3 people at least need to have the password to get in. And 3 people, hopefully, like in different parts of congregational life. And one of them should be on staff. So no matter how dedicated your tech volunteer may be and how much you value that person's work, is not only appropriate but essential that you make it clear you need the password. You do not want to be locked out of your congregation's social media tool. And that kind of sets the tone for like, is this somebody's baby or is it the whole congregation's? So that's that is a theological issue. Congregation's social media presence belongs to the congregation. And that may be different than, say, like if a minister has a blog, they may not want to give the access to 3 other people. And so then you're talking about, well, who owns that blog? And who does that blog speak for? And how do we present it in a way that's clear? That's that minister's blog. That's not the congregation's blog. So to be really clear about who owns what and make sure that you're implementing the proper procedures. Secure non-guessable passwords. This is pretty straightforward. Don't make the password to your congregation's blog or like the name of the street you're located on. Well, I don't know that I would have guessed that. I wouldn't have guessed 112233 though, right? Like I would have had to think of a lot. It could have been 445566 or, I mean. A good hacking computer would have guessed it, but it just, So don't try to get into the files in this congregation because you can't do it. Back up your content. So back up your blog. And when I say back up your blog, I don't mean cut and paste the post into a Word document. I mean, get some software, learn to actually back up a condensed file that contains the blog. You can't back up Facebook pages yet, at least I don't know of a free way to do it. You can back up Twitter feeds, you can back up your personal Facebook profile. I think backing up a podcast should be completely easy. There's so many ways to back things up. Research what they are and make them backed up. Identification, this is just something that occurred to me broadly. It's not something you necessarily have a lot of control over. I mean, to some extent it depends on the tool you pick. But a lot of times people are worried about like the nasties coming out on Facebook. Like if we have a page and it's public and like people are just they could write terrible things. And I have found people do not usually write terrible things because their face is on their comment and their name and their friends know who they are. And I think like, 5 or 10 years ago, people would say you're safer on the internet if you're totally anonymous. And that might have been safer for each person, but I think we've found that your community is safer if people have names and faces. And not every tool can require that. And sometimes, like if you have a blog and you try to set it up so you really can't get in unless you have a name and a face and whatever, that could actually really decrease the accessibility. But just to consider that like you may be safer in a community where people have names and faces. Okay, confidentiality. So this is for people. It's also for congregations in institutional settings. Treat social media as a completely public space. So if you would not post it on your congregation's website's front page, because it wouldn't be appropriate, don't post it on your Facebook page, don't post it on your blog. It's not like a back channel to conversations that you want to have in public, but you really shouldn't. Assume anybody could find this. and read it. And I have occasionally seen things on a congregation's Facebook page where I thought, like, I'm pretty sure they would not put that on the homepage of their website. And they probably think only congregants are having the conversation there. And it's actually, I'm looking at it, and so can anyone else. Don't count on 100% security even for private groups. So I know Facebook has private groups. Ning, I think, has private groups. There are email lists that are, you have to apply to subscribe. But just consider that software is hacked on occasion. And if you're talking about a group where everyone in the group can see content, only one person's account has to be compromised in order for that information to no longer be secure. So I just really discourage a congregation. Like the question about could you, what if you put your worship behind a password? If you wouldn't be comfortable with someone seeing it, my feeling is don't put it up. And if it could harm somebody, like I've heard of scenarios where if information about a congregant was public, could really harm that person because of their social location, don't put it on the internet at all, even in a private group. I also think there's issues with private groups in terms of welcoming people and making our congregational life non-exclusionary. It's okay to react to the disclosure of concerning personal information by others. So this kind of gets into individual issues, but it could come up on a group congregations page also, which is to say it is public, and if somebody has put in something on Facebook or their blog or anywhere that you see and it makes you worry about them, it's okay to react to that. They didn't put it in private, they put it in public, and you see it. And I know, just a tangent here, somebody who works with youth told me, people have a lot of different policies, but she said, my policy is I don't go out and friend my youth. I let them, if they friend me though, I will accept that invitation. But I tell them, if you friend me on Facebook and I see something, that I'm going to react to that. I'm going to treat that as if you shared it with me, because you did. So just to understand that and have a decision in advance about how that information is going to be handled. Okay, clear expectations for online community. So this is starting to get into what are the safeguards? Someone talked about gatekeeping. Okay, so there's two parts of this. One has to do with the people who are producing the content. If it's a tool where there's an institutional voice and then there's comments, like a blog, there's a poster and then there's comments, we're talking about the poster. Or Facebook, somebody posts and other people comment. So this is for the person administering and posting content. I am a fan of covenants. I don't know that any congregations have done it, but I think it's a good idea to have a covenant among people who are managing social media tools for the congregation about what kinds of things are we posting, how do we interact with one another, how do we interact with other people, how do we balance multiple requests for content from different parts of the congregation. Somebody wants one thing posted, somebody wants something else, how do we handle that? Building on the best real-world practices and building on your congregation's existing covenant or behavioral covenant or whatever's already in place to try to translate that. And then content moderation policies are my favorite thing for people starting a page or a blog. I think Facebook pages is where this comes up the most. The UUA's Facebook page has a content moderation policy. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. And it's just we're not going to tolerate the following things. And we're going to delete them. Or, we control this page. I mean, it's a polite way of saying, we invite your participation, but this is not like standing in a public park. And I think sometimes people think, oh, but what about free speech? Your Facebook page really is just like you wouldn't allow certain things to be said in a covenant group. I mean, we don't allow things that are hateful. We don't allow financial solicitation. There's certain things that don't belong. And so you work out what those are and you post that very clearly. And then you just go in and delete the things that don't belong. And if you need to have a conversation with somebody about it, you can do that too, depending on what the content is. So enforcing the policies. So once they're there, you got to actually have a system for enforcing them fairly, because it's not really fair. If some people get to post something but some people don't, you really try to figure out am I being impartial in deleting the same kinds of content from different people? And somebody asked about making sure that the people who post inappropriate things don't post. And I think that's kind of to me that kind of reminds me of the question of at what point do you how do you handle a problem person in your congregation anyway? You probably start by identifying problem behavior. And when you see that behavior from anybody, hopefully, you approach them. Somebody, your minister or your right relations committee or whatever, approaches that person. It's hey, we have these guidelines that you hopefully already have written down, and you're kind of violating them, and we're going to have to talk about how that's not going to happen anymore, and whatever. I don't do that, so I don't know the whole process, but I imagine it's there. And then after you've talked to that person a couple times, and maybe something's not working, then you kind of step it up. And then maybe you kind of say, well, there's this one group where they're causing trouble, so they can't really be a part of that group for a while, or maybe forever. And so you think about it on social media the same way. I mean, the first time I see something inappropriate, if it's not dangerous, if it's just like this is kind of spammy, I just delete it. But by like the third or fourth time, I might like approach that person and say like, okay, maybe you don't realize that this is inappropriate, and then like if they keep doing it, you can just take them off the page. Like, I've never had to do that on, no, I have once or twice I've had to do that on the UUA's Facebook page, but I find most people, I just delete the inappropriate content and it doesn't come back, unless it's hateful or something really terrible. It's usually less of a problem than you think it's going to be, but there are procedures, both technically what's possible with the tool and also what you can decide in advance that can help to reduce that. And then also that people model good behavior. And when people see other people behaving well, unless they're like a really aggressive offender of social norms, a lot of people will just get the message by seeing how other people use it. And that's why you want to have a lot of people on your social media communities. Okay, so this is the sample content moderation policy. So I took out the UUA and put congregation name in. But if you go to the UUA's Facebook page, which is facebook.com/theuua, this is in our info section. So you can just cut and paste it. Other congregations have them too. You can look around and see which one you like, but this is pretty straightforward. And I will say we have a slightly more narrow policy than a congregation might, because we have 15,000 people in. So somebody might in a congregation post like, my son had a birthday, I'm so excited. And that would be appropriate for a congregational Facebook page in a way that it wouldn't be for like the UUA's Facebook page. So, yeah. Okay, how can individuals use social media to improve relationships? Be your best self online. I just can't say this enough. I mean, it's permanent and it's public, and there's a lot of room for misunderstanding through social media. So just really think about, like, what is my best self? What is it I really want to share with people today to make their day better? And what maybe do I want to share that would not be productive, and maybe I'm just going to go call a friend instead. Consistent and clear policies to friending. This is really especially important, I think, for religious professionals who end up in some dilemmas. And I think there's different ways people have worked it out. Some people say, I just tell people I don't friend anybody in my congregation. My Facebook profile is not for congregational use at all. I don't know how well that works if you want to minister through Facebook, but it is an option. And there's all the way from that to like, I'm going to friend everybody I meet, on a Sunday morning, to I am not going to go friend you if you're a member of my congregation, but you can friend me and I will accept that request. So just knowing what is your policy, rather than waiting until it happens, and then you're kind of like stuck having to make a snap judgment about a particular person, knowing in advance how you're going to handle something and applying it consistently. Real-world ethical principles still apply. We talked a lot about this already. Some conversations need to happen face-to-face. So just being really clear about that. That can be part of a congregational social media policy to say, so somebody asked about divisive conversations on a page. So my recommendation would be, like, maybe if you think something's going to be divisive, don't start it. But if it just turns that way and you didn't realize, it's, I think, appropriate for somebody in a position of authority to step in and say, I'm going to remove this conversation and archive it, and I think we should all meet in person, and I'm going to set up that meeting, and here's how we're going to have it. I mean, again, it's not like you have to preserve every single thing that goes on the page, or every single conversation has to be allowed to run its course. I think there's a time and a place to say, this really needs to go in person. Knowledge about privacy settings is power. So even though I said that nothing is 100% private, I think that there's still some use in knowing, for instance, on Facebook, how you can group people together and give everyone in a particular group a level of access to your personal information. So understand what those settings are and what your options are. Oh, this is really cute. I found this, Eric Resley is a student at Harvard Divinity School, And he sent me a paper he just wrote about online ministry, which is on the UUA's new media blog. But he wrote these 10 commandments of social networking. And I don't know if you probably can't all read them from where they are, but I'm just going to go through, and I liked them because they're pretty specific. So if you're thinking about like how do these principles translate into a more detailed plan of action. So he suggests don't post personal information, opinions, or media that compromise your ministerial integrity. Don't talk about fights with your family, your friends, people in the congregation. Should be obvious. Don't use inappropriate language. You know, if people are used to seeing you and you talk and present yourself in a certain way, and then on Facebook you're like some totally other inappropriate person, that's, that's not good. Don't talk about intimate information that would make people feel uncomfortable. The TMI, don't do that. This is what we talked about a few minutes ago. Don't substitute electronic communication for having a face-to-face conversation. Don't exercise discretion, maintain professional boundaries, uphold offline confidentiality practices. Again, like something someone shared with you. For instance, an example would be maybe you write a blog and somebody emailed you a question or an idea in response to your blog that you have a feeling you probably don't want the whole world to know about. You know, treat that as confidential like you would if they had said it to your face. Update and maintain your online presence. That's a safety thing to make sure that you haven't been hacked, conversations are healthy, questions are being answered. But it also is just, it's just a nice way, if you've started that online relationship, to continue it. Be honest and authentic without oversharing, and have fun. So, how do we make our online community inclusive? Okay, so there's only, there is a limit to inclusivity. You know, there are people who simply do not want to be on social media and can't be swayed, or really can't access it. And that's why we talk about things like, you know, offer to print up the newsletter for people who can't access the internet. You know, call somebody if you know that that's the way that you need to get in touch with them. So just be open. You know, if the congregation is sort of meeting you halfway by setting up a Facebook page and communicating with you on Facebook, then as a member, meet other people halfway by communicating the way that they need to be communicated with. Then I talked about promoting the congregation's social media presence in other congregational materials, so linking between things. Because people might just not know that the congregation has a Facebook page. And so you want to like tell them, put it in the bulletin, put it in the service program, make announcements about it. Make sure nobody should feel like I just didn't even know or I never heard. Don't make assumptions about who can and can't use social media. So I hear a lot of like, well, the older people in our congregation, they probably can't use Facebook. And I'm thinking like, well, why not? Like, why couldn't they use it? And how do you know that they're not using it? Maybe you're just not friends with them on it. So don't assume, oh, it's only the elderly and they're not using it and we'll never reach them. Or all the young people love Twitter, we're just going to go use Twitter because that's where like the young people are. Instead, though, I do think it's important to offer people opportunities to learn to use the tools. So why not set up a table in fellowship hour and invite people in a secure and appropriate way to, you know, set up like a Facebook account and connect with other people in the congregation and become fans of the page and, you know, have those trainings and demonstrations that help people who might just be like a little nervous jump on board. So I think those are the ways that we can be as inclusive as possible, and then of course always inviting people to come to church and be face-to-face together and having the most important conversations. You're probably not going to have your annual meeting over the internet. You know, like that needs to happen in person so that everybody can hopefully be a part of it. How do we use social media in a way that is spiritually nourishing? And I think this has really been the crux of the entire conversation this morning. So I'm not going to go back over it, but just to keep in mind, you know, we control our social media presence. The tools do not control us. And we think about, you know, what are our gifts? What are our congregation's gifts? What's our mission and message? And what can we share that's going to make other people's lives and our lives better? And we do it. So I wanted to leave you with a couple of slides. A couple of years ago, I interviewed folks who use social media. It was all bloggers. And a lot of the quotes that they said stuck with me, but these were two I really liked about sort of the surprises and the rewards of using social media. So some of you might know Reverend James Ford, and I think he's in Providence now, and he writes a blog called Monkey Mind. And he writes about all different things, but he says in this quote, he said, "I started the blog when I started a sabbatical as a way to keep in touch with the congregation. I've come to feel it's an important part of my ministry." And then I liked this quote too. This is a layperson, Tina Simpson, and she started a blog, I think she's in Rochester, New York, called Wellspring. And this is coming out of their covenant group and small group ministry program. And it's a group blog, and it's lay people sharing their spiritual insights. And it's really gotten to be quite popular, and the writing is very good. So she says, "Our thoughts and insights and musings may open doors for other Unitarian Universalists to know that our denomination is open enough to hold our spiritual selves. I personally write because it helps me make sense of this crazy life we all lead. It seems that what I write helps others make sense too."